Welcome to Beating the Odds, the lighter side of stroke survival and recovery, where survivors and their loved ones come to find comfort and connection, and maybe even a few laughs along the way. In this episode, we're thrilled to introduce you to Ms. Lori Jennifer Brink Langworthy. Since 1992, she has seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. Rather than me starting with a question of the day, I'm going to make the introduction. Here you go, there's your introduction. And let Tracy lead these questions. I will jump in as we go along. I am excited for LJ, Lori Jennifer, LJ, will share about being, as she put it, in the belly of the beast with our family when my stroke happened. But she also has her own experience with surviving and thriving after her car accident. With that, let's get started.
Okay.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi there,
So
Lori.
nice to finally meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. Thanks for coming on and sharing with us.
Both from Long Island.
Yeah, I just learned
Strong
that.
Island.
Good old Long Island. I'm further east than you're familiar with, Port Washington.
Yes,
I'm
Port
like
Washington,
an hour outside the city or more. So, yes, we have that in common. So thanks for being here, and I can't wait to hear all about Brenda in the years that we lost touch right after college. And so,
Brenda and I have known each other since 1992. We met at Camp Echo Lake, the summer camp in Warrensburg, New York, where I started as a camper in 1986, and Brenda first started working in 1992. And I was a counselor in training that year. She was a counselor. We became friendly. I think we somehow bamboozled the director and head counselor to put us on the same staff the following summer. But somehow we ended up on the same staff with the same group of girls. And I mean, the stories I could tell you, Tracy, I'm sure you have college stories too, but I think Brenda and I have in so many ways grown up together and had careers. That she was my work wife for a very long time.
Aww.
And she's truly family, like in every sense of the word, and her family is family in every sense of the word.
That's amazing.
I love her, and by extension, love you too.
Oh, I love you too, Laura. Can I call you LJ?
Anything you want. Anything you want.
But Laura, I also want to mention that in 1994, I was a group leader for your sister.
Yes.
So the connection kept going.
That's
Oh,
true.
wow.
That's true.
That's a great story. I never was blessed to go to summer camp, but I can't imagine. It must have been so fun. And then this beautiful friendship evolved from it. So that's awesome. I just follow you on Facebook and look at all your pictures and Bren's, and that's how I found Brenda.
That's how you connected us.
Yeah, I am Brenda's unofficial social media, I guess, director. And when I post and tag her, that's how people know she's doing things.
Yeah,
so I understand that's how you found her.
I'm not sure because we weren't friends on Facebook. I don't know how it popped up on people.
Because I tagged her. I tag her, and then it appears on her page.
Right.
So you must have seen it that way.
But I don't think we were friends on Facebook. It was very confusing. But somehow I saw her tagged, and I was like, "Whoa, it's
meant to
Brenda."
be.
So then that's how I reached out to her. But I'm glad I did because here we are now.
Yeah.
And we had so much.
I want you to know I have listened to every word of every episode, and what you ladies are doing is really, truly phenomenal for yourselves, for so many other people in your brain injury community and beyond. And it's been such a joy to hear your stories and to hear the stories of other people you've brought on. And
thank you.
Excellent job, ladies.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much. So let's jump into when Brenda, now you were living in New York. You're in New York right now. And what happened? Like, explain how you found out that something terrible had happened to Brenda.
So in the couple weeks leading up to Brenda's event, her oopsie, as she calls it, she was having migraines. And for all the years I've known her, she struggled with migraines. And there were times when she would get a migraine and it would really like lay her out. And I would know that if we were, whatever was going on socially or professionally, if she had a migraine, she was, she needed some time. And she had had a couple weeks of really bad migraines. I know Jay had spoken to her because I was talking to Jay as well. Jay had taken her to the ER not once, but twice. And if you hear a little bit of bitterness of like, why didn't they do more? That's in there somewhere, but we're going to let that go. But I knew that Brenda was struggling. She, interestingly, was saying to me that she was feeling a little bit better. And so we were on the phone, and actually in your first episode when Brenda's telling her story and she said I was on the phone with a friend, I was the friend. And when I was listening to that in my car, and I was totally brought back to that moment because I was in the car actually driving from the Adirondacks where I was living and live now down to Long Island for a work conference the next day. And I was on the phone with Brenda and she was feeling better. We were chatting, but then all of a sudden she said, you know what, Laura, my head's hurting. I think I need to go lay down. I think I'm going to get off the phone. And on the one hand, of course, like it's your friend and you're concerned when they have that kind of pain. But on the other hand, as Brenda's kids have said, and as Jay said, it was a little bit par for the course for Brenda. And so I said, okay, well, call me later when you feel better. And I got off the phone. Drove down to Long Island. Later that night, I remember Jay calling me.
Oh, wow.
And saying, it wasn't, I don't have a huge memory of that call.
Right.
He didn't say a lot and he didn't have much information,
Right.
but just said that, he explained what happened with Jacob being home, Brenda getting off the phone, at some point her throwing up and passing out, Brenda not picking up Isaac from school when she was supposed to. And Brenda was like always all over all the things. So that was very unusual.
Right.
And Jacob, unfortunately, finding his mom like that and in his towel. If you didn't hear his episode, he was wearing a towel when it happened. And then Jay and Isaac coming home and them taking her to the hospital. And so Jay called me. And at that point, it was like later at night. And so I was in Long Island and it was too late at night to drive to Montreal, although I probably would have.
Right.
So the next morning, I blew off the conference I was supposed to go to. I literally got in my car and drove up to Montreal. Wow. And I got there and I remember, Jay, was it Jay? No, maybe it was Jacob. Jacob was describing when he walked into the room and there was all these people there.
Yes.
Like Brenda's parents and sisters and, his family and his dad's best friend, all these people in this, he called it a closet. It was a small room. I wouldn't say a closet. It was small, but I had that same feeling too. And everybody was sort of there, kind of not knowing what was happening or what was going to happen next. And I also remember the moment when they wheeled Brenda out to go to surgery and them, really saying like, we don't know what to expect here.
Yeah.
We're going to go in and try to relieve the brain swelling. And so we all like saw her, kind of go off in the gurney. And I think in that moment, I consciously or unconsciously made the decision to like just kind of put aside what I was feeling,
right,
to as much extent as possible, and I kind of said to myself, what would Brenda want me to do for her family?
Right.
What would Brenda want me to do to support
them? Yeah.
And that's kind of what I did. I think at that point, they knew the surgery was going to be very long. It was already very late. So everybody went home to, different, wherever they were staying. And Jay said he was going to stay, obviously. If you haven't already noticed, Tracy, Jay and Brenda have quite the love story. That's a whole nother episode. But they have quite the love story and it's really magical and beautiful. Yes. And the way the way they look at each other and partner with each other is great. But he obviously was going to stay and I wasn't going to let him stay by himself.
Right.
So I insisted on staying with him, despite the fact that he was like, no, you need sleep. You drove all day. I said, I'm not leaving you.
Right.
I'm just not. And so Jay and I sat in the family room of the neuro hospital. No, this was a little bit bigger. They had put the family in a closet, but then there was this bigger
had a big
family.
Room.
We had a bigger room. Yeah, there was other people there too, but we were there and we didn't know. We didn't know. We just didn't know what was going to happen and where this was going to take us. And I just remember feeling like I just have to do whatever he needs and be there for him and sit with him. At one point, he looked at me, and Brenda mentioned this in her intro, but at one point, Jay looked at me and said, LJ, and he was so understandably serious and worked up. And LJ, we're in the belly of the beast. Wow. We're in the belly of the beast right now, and you're with me in the belly of the beast. And I don't know if we're going to get out of it, but because now it's sort of funny and Jay and dramatic to be like we're in the belly. So there are times I'll now say to him, "Are we in the belly of the beast right now, Jay?" So it's now become I
love those
funny
little
thing,
jokes that come out of like tragedy. Yeah,
yes,
that's great.
Yes. So thank God and goodness and Mother Nature and whoever else, Buddha, you want to thank. But Brenda made it through surgery, and
thank God.
thank God, and was then in ICU and was in a coma. And there was, a number of family kind of coming in and out, being supportive of her. And then there's an alarm going off, which is very much like how it was in your ICU.
Yeah, there you go.
There was alarms going off. Same. It was bringing me right back there.
How symbolic.
I think, what one of the things that also comes up for me was I sort of became maybe self-imposed, and I apologize, but the communications director, because Jay very much wanted to control and contain the information.
Yes.
And I wanted to respect that. And there was no way that there could be no communication, right? Like so I really tried to be helpful to Jay in crafting what it was he wanted to say and who it was he wanted to say it to. And so I started sending, I could probably find them somewhere, but he would sort of dictate to me and I would type up an email and I would send it. We had different emails depending on what level of inner circle people were. But I think communicating to people the amount of information that Jay felt comfortable with and that he felt Brenda would want communicated, but making sure that people knew.
Yeah, they were updated and
was important.
Of course, so many people are concerned, and to leave them, hanging like, what is going on? Yeah. And I get, Jay's wanting to keep some of Brenda's privacy. I totally get that. I think I told Jay that.
But it was also for him too. I mean, in that, I think the more people he told, the more he talked about it, the more real it was. And I think he didn't also want to receive people like, are you okay? And what do you need?
Yeah,
he wanted to be able to do what he needed to do without too much of feeling like I now need to respond to all these other people who are worried about me.
That takes a lot out of you, and you're reliving every second, having to repeat it over and over and over. Yeah. So thank God they had you.
So I then, oh, thank you. I mean, look, I tried to, so I was 2.5 hours away. I lived 2.5 hours away. I was going back and forth a couple times a week. Sometimes I would just come for the day. Sometimes I would stay overnight. Interestingly, I don't know if I ever shared this with you, Brenda, but Jay always wanted to have me stay in the guest room of the house that I always stayed in. I mean, I knew where everything was and was comfortable and would have happily done that. But there was something that I couldn't do that. I stayed on the couch, on your brown couch in the den, Brenny. I don't know what it was, but it was too hard for me to be in that guest room where I normally stayed. And actually Brenda's office when we worked together was right next door. And
without her being in the house.
That was So, but I tried to, I tried to be there for the kids too. I think Abby and Jacob were very much in that developmental place of wanting to individuate even before this, even without this, right? Like they were in that place of like, I'm starting to establish my own identity as an adult. And so I think that there were lots of people who were there for them if they wanted it. But I think that they were at various stages of choosing to want that. And Isaac, the way that I kind of created this connection with Isaac is I used to text him. I mean, I saw him often, but I would text him a joke of the day every day. Every morning. I would wake up and I would text him a joke. They were often terrible dad jokes, but I would send it to him. And that was our way of staying connected. I will say, and I hope Jay doesn't get mad at me for saying this, I do think I respect and I understand all the reasons why Jay wanted to keep the kids from seeing anything that they didn't need to see or being unnecessarily scared. But I think not only kids in general, but these 3 young adults in particular are really strong and resilient like their parents. And I always wished he brought them in a little sooner. And it was interesting to hear them talk about that. I wonder, it doesn't really matter, but I wonder if they would have talked more if Jay would have, and Jay was going through his own trauma. So he, was doing what he could do. But with, I remember having conversations with Jay about Isaac having not come to see his mom in the hospital because Jay had really said he doesn't need to see her like that. But I always felt like he's probably imagining something far worse than what's actually happening. And I remember Jay asked me to come up when Isaac wanted to come. And so I was there when, that happened. But I guess one of the take homes, I feel like, right or wrong, and there's no real right or wrong, is I think, well, certainly deciding how much information to share with kids, because they can't all, it's certainly not at all ages, handle all of it, bringing them into the situation a little bit more and letting them know that this is where we are, this is the reality, and here's all the positives, and here's all the hope.
Right. So they can make that connection and their mind doesn't go to the worst case scenario. And I think Abby had said that, didn't she, Bren, when she was describing my dad wasn't really telling me?
Yes.
And when she first
and I remember we were in the belly of the beast when he's like texting with her when she's halfway across the world and trying to get home and, you know, navigating all that. But I will share a funny story, Brenda. I think you know the one I'm going to share. When Brenda was in a coma, Tracy, to this day, I want to go back, march up to that hospital and talk to this doctor. But when Brenda was in the hospital in her coma, I know, I will not divulge anything, but she was in her coma, and you know the doctors would come in and check, and we were sitting by her side and all the things. And at one point the doctor came in and was like trying to rouse her and calling her name and doing all the things that you would expect, the flashlight in the eye and all that. And then he reached down and tweaked her nipple, like called her name and tweaked her nipple.
No, cut it out.
And I was like, what is happening? I was horrified. Tracy, horrified. It's sort of like, you know, when they like rub on your chest bone in America.
Yeah.
With all due respect for Canada, I don't know, but apparently I was shocked. And Jenny, Jay's sister, who she and I often spent a lot of time together, like couldn't believe it. And I remember at some point I was like, I was ready to stand up and say, you get your hands off my friend's nipple. Like, what are you doing? It felt like such a violation. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I'm like, the woman's in a coma. You're going to tweak her nipple? Like, what is happening?
Oh, my.
I was so mad. So I did some research about, like, is this a normal thing in Canada? Like, is this what happens?
Just Canada.
Well, and I don't remember if I had asked a different doctor that I had spoken to, or one of the nurses, but I asked because I was like, listen, you got to level with me. Like, do I need to report this guy? Like, what's happening? They said, they're like, not everybody does it, but it is a very sensitive area. So it is, a good way to kind of
For men, do they tweak their scrotum? Like,
Tracy, we're best friends now, because that's what I said.
Like,
I said, okay, if that's the case, then I want you to reach down and grab a testicle and tweak that too.
There you go.
If someone's in a coma. I mean,
that don't
Tracy, I was horrified.
Coma. What?
Yeah.
This is the most bizarre thing I've heard medically.
I know. Listen, if anybody listening is from Canada and knows this is a legit thing, put it in the comments.
You know
let
what?
us know.
I have connections now in Canada in the stroke community.
All right, we'll find out.
And I will ask them. I definitely will. Like, that's bizarre.
Yeah.
If that was me,
on the other hand,
if that was me in a coma and my sister
she didn't
was
know.
in the room, I think she would have punched him.
Oh, I was very close. It like all the Long Island in me was coming out, Tracy.
My sister
I
would
really
not
was
have
like,
that.
it was. So anyway, so that was at the time a not fun moment, but a funnier moment that we talk about now.
That's
but
hilarious,
I remember sitting by Brenda's side. I remember holding her hand. I remember, talking to her and reading to her. Jay had me print a ton of pictures, and he put pictures all over her hospital room. We listened to music. I remember
the playlist
at one point when she was out of the coma, and she started mouthing the words to the Chicks song, which was something that she and I went to a concert, and she and Jay always listened to. And I do remember, actually, even backing up from that, Jay called me when it seemed like Brenda was about to come out of the coma. Eyes were starting to open.
Okay.
And it was in the morning, and I was sitting at my desk in Warrensburg, and I was about to start working, and he was like, I think she's waking up. I think her eyes are opening. I just wanted to call you. I literally hung up the phone with him, got up from my desk, picked up my purse, got in the car, and drove straight to Montreal.
Oh my God.
Because I was like, I have to be there. I have to be there. So I think the people at the border knew me by then, because I was like, hey, me again.
No contraband.
Just coming across. Yeah, it's fine.
Wow.
It was, she was starting to wake up. That wasn't any sort of like you see in the movies, like big, whatever moment. But just I wanted to be there for her, for Jay. I would sometimes, at the end of the evening, Jay and I would go back to their house, and I would just want to get him to talk and whatever he wanted to share, but just sort of be there for him. And because Brenda was getting the medical care she needed, and obviously we were there for her. But I remember another funny conversation we had with Jay and I had, when he said, when all of this is over, now she's progressing and getting better. When all of this is over and I get her home, I am going to have cameras in every corner. I'm going to have microphones. I'm going to have people there. I'm going to get a dog that can detect stroke oncoming. I'm going to make sure that he wanted to basically bubble wrap his wife.
Of course.
and put her in this like castle of safety. Yeah. And I remember turning to him and saying, Jay, I understand that. And do you know your wife? You think your wife's going to let you like have cameras in every corner and bubble wrap her? And she's far too independent for that, right?
That's hilarious.
I think everyone was in a place of, thank God she lived through this. Thank God she's, the minute we were able to say, like, it's Brenda. I remember Abby said it in her episode.
Yes.
Like,
she's still in there.
She was there.
Yeah.
She was there. And she may or may not be able to walk. She may or not be able to move her hands or see as well, but she's there. And that was, I don't want to cry. I'm not going to cry, but thank you. It was really important that she was there, that she
absolutely
survived it. And then the other sort of thing I remember is, when she was, it was right before she was going to get out of the neuro and go to physical therapy. I remember I was home, and it was maybe like March 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, something like that. And I had a lot going on that day at work and stuff. And I remember talking to my now husband and saying, I really want to go up and see Brenda, but I have so much to do today. I don't know. And he turned to me and he said, this was right before March 13th, when everything's shut down for COVID in 2020. And he said to me, listen, if you don't go now, I don't know when you're going to be able to go again. It seems like they're going to shut the border at some point.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling so scared of that and not being able to get to her. So of course I got in the car and, drove up again and saw her, but then they closed the border. And it's interesting how Jay remembered the part where Brenda was in rehab, about how I can't remember what he said on his episode, but he said something like they kicked her out.
Yes.
Or something like that. Like, right? They kicked her out.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how, I love you, Jay, but that's not what happened.
Corrected in the episode, I think.
Yes. So Jay was obviously going to visit her, even though the rest of us couldn't come anymore.
Right.
And he felt like there was a chance they were going to, which they ended up doing, shutting down people coming in and out of the rehab.
Right.
Because it was COVID and nobody knew what was happening, and nobody wanted everybody in the rehab center to get it. Right. So he made the decision to bring Brenda home.
Oh, okay.
So that he could, because he would not have survived being separated from her and not being able to see her.
Right.
So he brought her home. And I think, as many terrible things as there were for COVID, I think for Brenda and Jay and the kids, being able to be together, being able to have that time, it's almost, I think about it sometimes, like if they had all gotten back to their, regular lives, would they have had that time? Would they have taken that time to really rally around her and be together?
I think we've talked about that a couple of times, Brenda, definitely with Isaac's conversation, like being all together. And, everyone's there to watch her progress and get stronger and build that closeness. And like you, I was like, if one good thing came out of the pandemic was that they had that time together just to connect again and just whoever. Well, I mean, you never know.
And it also was normal. It's what everybody else was doing too.
Yes.
So it's not like they were doing something out of the ordinary. It's what everybody else got to do.
I used to say that when it was happening, I used to joke like, if I have to stop, then the whole world needs to stop.
Right.
Yeah.
Fault.
Yeah. It was good for that time, but then things opened up and the world started. I was like, wait a minute, I'm not going. I'm still going.
Yeah.
So that was a really rude awakening for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember feeling that when, not related at all, but, grieving and things like that. When my mom passed away, and I had to go back to Long Island. I was living in Rochester at the time. It was 1998. I was like, it felt so weird that everybody outside my family was going along like nothing happened. And I'm like, my mother just died. What do you mean you're going to the deli? Like, you know, you expect everyone to feel and going through what you're going through at that time, but everyone goes back to normal, more or less. But yeah, I totally understand that. So I'm happy they had that
and
time.
I did, yes, me too. I was going to say that I did feel, for a long time I wondered and worried, which obviously doesn't help anybody, including me. I know, but should I have, that day that, we got off the phone, the day of your oopsie, Bren, should I have called Jay? Should I have called one of the kids? Should I have kept calling back to check in? I know that magical thinking can't change anything. And I know that, if her brain was going to rupture, it was going to rupture whether I called back or not.
Exactly.
But, you have those moments. Cause I would have traded places with Brenda, truly. I mean, I remember when we were at camp and there was a really, really, really bad thunderstorm one day, and we were in the same office with one or two other people, and someone needed to go out in this horrible thunderstorm and get, messages out to people. And Brenda and I were sort of debating, or not debating, kind of arguing who was going to go. I turned to her and I said, "You are a mom. You are not going anywhere." And I pushed her out of the way and ran into the thunderstorm safely.
Yeah.
But Brenda is just still the most amazing light of a person who does so much for so many and continues to. And she is the sun that her family revolves around.
Yes.
And I think that the fact that she had such a traumatic event is her own, and the people that around her that love her were understandably so impacted by that. And toggling that line of thank goodness she's alive, and thank goodness she's here, and thank goodness she can talk and feel and all of those things. And the sadness of I had some real hard conversations with Jay about what he had always envisioned and where their life was at, and what his worries were in that moment of where their life would go.
Right.
And the kids too, and Brenda too. And me too. I mean, I love you. And it wasn't about me, but as my dear, dear friend, sister, family, it does. You guys have talked about this many times. The impact that it has on everyone around you, in addition to the person who has the trauma.
I think she froze.
Keeping us on our toes.
Yes.
Okay. So, for those of you listening and watching, Lori's power went out, so we had a little bit of an interruption, but we're back. We're going to finish this.
Very dramatic. The most dramatic podcast ever.
She caused such havoc.
It fits with the nature of what we're talking about, right? But so we would love to finish up this piece of it by you offering a tip of the day to anyone who has you've told so many things, which is so interesting for me, because so often I feel like, because I don't have memories of any of it, that it's like hearing a story about myself. So it's wild.
Right.
Yes.
But on that side, do you have a tip to share with anybody who is experiencing? You had a very unique position. Like I said at the beginning, you were in the belly of the beast.
I was around for the nipple tweak.
Yes.
Yes,
all
not
the
staying in the guest room. Yeah,
you
touched a lot.
Got our nipple switch.
I mean, I think loving the people you love, loving them hard, loving them often, showing, I don't mean the nipple tweak. I mean, in general and emotionally, I think that that's important. Showing up and making the most of every moment is important. And I think you want to be realistic and grounded but being as positive and future focused and moving in a forward direction, because I think that's what Brenda always did. I think that's what Jay always pushed for. I think that's what we just said. Whatever comes next, we're going to be there together. And I think if you move forward with the people that love you, that's kind of all you can do.
Yeah. And you were such an amazing support, I'm sure. And looking back, you had mentioned you wish you could have done this, called back, but everybody has those moments, but it just happened. Like there was no way to predict it, or, especially since she had already had 2 weeks of headaches and such. like Abby had said, Mom had these headaches, so she wasn't sure how serious this was. So everybody was kind of clueless and just in the dark.
Yeah.
So
sorry if I may, Tracy, just one other, I think obviously caretakers in not just Jay and the caretaker, but like in the hospital or in rehab, the nurses, the doctors, assistants, all of that, the people who push the wheelchairs, bring in your lunch. I think relating to them, they're doing such a service. They're coming in at such a poignant and difficult time in the lives of the people that they're working with, and I think being kind to them, being grateful to them is helpful, because then it humanizes the whole thing, right? Like, I mean, my doctors in my life probably hate me, but I always, I'll say to them, like, if I was your sister, your mother, your daughter, or your wife, what would you say or do? And I think, Bren was in the neuro for 60 days, and I think there were real relationships formed with the people that were there, and that were, and they looked out for Jay too. They knew who Jay was. They knew who his sister Jenny was. They knew Brenda. And they often said that people don't always show up for people with brain injuries the way people showed up for Brenda.
Wow.
I think honor the people that are working to help you as much as possible, and, speak up if something feels like the nipple tweaking, not okay.
Like, get off my like, friend's nipple, please.
Yeah.
No, but I have something to add to that little comment. When I was in ICU, I remember my sister was so thankful to all the staff and all the nurses. So every time she came up to the hospital, she would call me and say, "What do you want from the streets?" Like, because she knew the crew was there. So do you want this? Do you want that? Whatever was around the hospital. And then she would come with that, but she'd also come with a whole pizza for the nursing staff and the support staff. Yeah. So the two of them, the nurse station, all the nurses and my sister, they got to know her. She was pregnant at the time. So they were worried about her when they would have to bring the x-ray into me. So they would have her go into the nurse's station behind the desk and crouch under the counter to make sure that she wasn't affected by all the x-rays. So it was like they were all a team. And I think that's so important. And I wish I could go back. It's been 22 years, but that hospital isn't even open anymore, I don't think. Or maybe my surgical team left. But to go back and to thank them for looking after me.
Well, and Tracy, I've heard you talk about, your poor family that had to drive a whole hour and a half into the city every time they wanted to come see you. But as someone who, Brenda was going to try applesauce for the first time to see if she could swallow, I hopped in the car and went, right? Like when you love someone and they're struggling, all you want to do is be there for them, right? And so on behalf of your family and Brenda's family, we would drive whatever was needed to be with you guys, to show up and offer support in any way. So don't ever feel bad about that, because we wouldn't be anywhere else.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, your tip of the day is absolutely poignant and just so important. And I agree with you 100%. So, Bren, I don't necessarily know if I have a tip of the day, except to follow Lori, LJ's lead. And more important, well, not more importantly, but the communication. It's so hard. Everyone's in their own place with this event and what they can handle. I'm trying to, think about how they're going through it, the worry and all that, and then trying to protect the kids. And then the kids side, they're like, what is going on? And they're thinking the worst. So I know it's hard for people to communicate, but I think that's really, really necessary. And no, like you said, there's no right answer. That's right. I think that I would add to what you said, Lori, about the love you have for the people that are going through it, and showing that as often as you can and communicating. So that would be my tip, I guess. Brenda, do you have one?
I'm not going to add a tip. My tip is stay tuned for the next episode, because we're going to do another episode with Lori.
Yay! All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you real soon. Thanks, Lori. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah. Stay for part 2.